Christie Sides was fully aware of what she had in Caitlin Clark. By the way, people forget that Fever team, her rookie year, started out 1-9. After that, Christie Sides had the Fever on a rampage. And after the Olympic break, holy hell.
Christie Sides just trolled her former team while they were getting blown out by an expansion franchise. Posted herself playing golf with the caption, "Hard to beat days like this," as the Fever were down by 30 to Portland. That's not subtle. That's a head coach who knows exactly what she left behind and exactly what's coming next. Because here's what nobody's talking about. Christie Sides got fired for letting Caitlin Clark run wild in the second half of last season. The Fever went from 1-9 to playoff contenders after the Olympic break. Clark was unleashed, the offense flowed, and suddenly Indiana looked dangerous. Then Stephanie White shows up, brings back the old guard mentality, and we're watching the whole thing collapse in real time.
But we gotta keep talking about the fallout around last night's blowout. The fact that, well, we got an expansion team now that has got a better record than the Indiana Fever, and there's been full unadulterated crash outs going on everywhere, as there should be after last night. We've got a couple of snippets of audio and video from last night's game that came out.
This is the fallout we're dealing with. An expansion team with a better record than the Indiana Fever. Fans are crash coursing everywhere, and they should be. When you've got the biggest star in women's basketball history and you're getting embarrassed by a team that didn't exist 6 months ago, something is fundamentally broken. The audio that came out from last night's game tells you everything you need to know about what's happening behind the scenes. Stephanie White's substitution patterns, her comments about who should play point guard, the way she's structuring this roster. It's not incompetence, it's intentional, and fans are starting to see it.
One with the biggest spotlight on it has blocked Jason Whitlock. Your league's a joke. It's a total and complete joke right there. Jason Whitlock, Amber Cox has blocked me on this app. What are we doing? I mean, what are we doing? This league can handle no criticism. The crash out continues. Guys,
Jason Whitlock, 30 years in sports media, hosted Pardon the Interruption on ESPN, worked for the Kansas City Star, the Sporting News, hosted Speak for Yourself with Colin Cowherd. This is not some random blogger with an agenda. This is a legitimate journalist who's covered professional sports for 3 decades. And Amber Cox, the chief operating officer and general manager of the Indiana Fever, blocked him on social media. Think about that decision for a second. Your franchise has the biggest spotlight it's ever had. You've got the most marketable player in league history. Ratings are through the roof when she plays, and your response to media criticism is to block a nationally recognized sports journalist. That tells you everything about how this organization handles accountability. They can't take criticism. They don't want questions. And when someone with Whitlock's credentials starts asking why this team is falling apart, the response isn't to address the concerns, it's to silence the messenger.
people are throwing in the towel. I actually feel quite free today. My summer schedule is totally freed up. I love you, Caitlin Clark, but I'm looking away from the car crash. The Indiana Fever have no clue how to retaliate against the entire WNBA and the referees coming after you. I really feel for CC, as I know how competitive you are, but I honestly don't even feel bad about it. The big Angel rematch, not watching. Maybe the highlights might pique my interest, but I doubt the front office has a decent game plan. I can't even picture you on another team. The league will fail if nothing is done about the current shit. WNBA, Indiana Fever tagged in that.
Now we're seeing the real cost. This is from one of the biggest Caitlin Clark supporters online. Not a casual fan, not someone who just started watching this season. Someone who's been invested since Iowa, who's defended the league through all the controversies, who's bought the merchandise and watched every game. And they're done. I actually feel quite free today. My summer schedule is totally freed up. I love you, Caitlin Clark, but I'm looking away from the car crash. The Indiana Fever have no clue how to retaliate against the entire WNBA and referees coming after you. The big Angel rematch, not watching. That's not an overreaction, that's pattern recognition. When you watch the front office make the same mistakes over and over, when you see the coaching staff actively limiting their best player, When the league office does nothing about the targeting, eventually you realize your time and money aren't valued, so you leave. And here's what makes this catastrophic for the WNBA. These aren't the fans who are always going to leave. These are the converts, the people who came for Caitlin Clark and were ready to stay for the league. They wanted to love women's basketball. They were defending it online, buying tickets, streaming games, and the league is systematically driving them away.
Coach Anderson, another good follow. Stephanie White last night on substitutions per the broadcast.
The Fever, a team that switches the most defensively in the league, and so they want to switch 1 through 5, which means that players like Meg Gustafson may get guarded by a guard. That's why you've seen her twice have and ones in the paint, taking advantage of that mismatch.
What world do you live in that you should have a guard playing a 5 or a 4? Occasionally, that might accidentally happen, but come on. Stephanie White on Raven Johnson. Listen to this.
White told us coming off her season best last game that she's playing with more aggression. She's not afraid to get into the paint, to play physical, and to score the basketball. And I think what I like most about what Steph White said when Raven Johnson's in the game, that the pace of the team picks up, that Raven Johnson is so fast with the basketball, they feel like they almost play faster with her as the one.
Listen to what Stephanie White said about substitutions during the broadcast. She's explaining why she's playing guards at the 4 and 5 positions. In what universe does that make tactical sense? You've got one of the best passing guards in basketball history, and your solution to getting blown out is to put her in positions where she can't use her vision, can't run the offense, can't do what she does better than anyone else in the league. Then there's the Raven Johnson situation. White told the media, "We play faster when she's at the 1. Raven Johnson, who couldn't score last night, who played 10 minutes and was gone, who, by the way, never fouled out under Dawn Staley at South Carolina, but somehow can't stay on the floor in the WNBA. Now, Raven's shown promise. She brings defense. At times, playing her at the 2 guard makes sense because she and Kelsey Mitchell are the same height, and at least she can defend. But running the offense through her instead of Caitlin Clark, that's not a basketball decision, that's an ego decision."
Guys, over and over and over again, Stephanie White believes this team is better without Caitlin Clark. People will start believing me at some point. So, yesterday evening, we got one of the funniest things ever. My boy Ben Daniel Podcast, go subscribe here on YouTube. Christie sides versus Stephanie White. Quote, "They woke an animal."
Here's the comparison that explains everything. Christie Sides was aware of what she had in Caitlin Clark. That Fever team started 1-9 her rookie year. Disaster start. Then Sides adjusted. She gave Clark the keys. She let her run the offense. And after the Olympic break, the Fever were dominant. They were kicking ass and taking names, making the playoffs, looking like a team that could build something special. People forget that transformation. The narrative became, Christie Sides doesn't know what she's doing because of that rough start. But she figured it out. She adapted. She recognized that when you have a generational talent, you build around them, not despite them. And here's the theory that's starting to make sense. Sides heard the rumors. She knew Kelly Krauskopf was coming back. Knew Stephanie White was going to leverage her way out of Connecticut. Knew the writing was on the wall. So she said forget it. Ignored the old guard. Handed Caitlin Clark the keys and let her prove what she could do. That's why Sides got fired. Not because the team wasn't winning. They were winning. But because she let CC run wild, and the people making decisions in that organization couldn't stand it.
That's trolling the Indiana Fever as they were getting their brains kicked in last night. I mean, damn. Got to be more careful. It's a disaster. And fans are tuning out. Fans are tuning out. I just got a post a minute ago. A guy said, "Hey, I'm going to keep following your channel to keep up with the drama, but I'm not watching any more of their games."
The rating situation is what should terrify the WNBA. We're not seeing numbers anymore. Broadcasts aren't releasing viewership data. And in the comment sections, in the social media replies, you're seeing the same message over and over. I'll catch the drama on black and white sports, but I'm not watching the games anymore. That's the death spiral for a professional sports league. When your most engaged fans would rather watch commentary about your product than the actual product, you've lost them. And these aren't people who hate women's basketball. These are people who wanted to love it, who tried to love it, who invested time and emotion into supporting it. But when you watch Caitlin Clark get targeted game after game with no protection from officials, when you see coaching decisions that make no tactical sense, when the front office blocks journalists for asking legitimate questions, when expansion teams are outperforming your flagship franchise, eventually you stop caring about the outcome because the outcome feels predetermined.
White sports. Again, there's a reason why we're not seeing ratings. Tell me what you think. The bottom has fell out. And Slurp FC and those creators are already trying to make up the excuses. Welcome to the dark side. Peace. I'm out. And subscribe. Make sure you're still subscribed.
So let's talk about what this actually means, because the implications go way beyond one bad season for the Indiana Fever. The WNBA had a golden opportunity this year. Caitlin Clark brought unprecedented attention to the league. Viewership records were shattered. Merchandise sales exploded. Arenas that were half empty for years suddenly had sellout crowds. Casual sports fans who'd never watched women's basketball were tuning in. This was the breakthrough moment the league had been waiting for since its founding. And they're blowing it. Not slowly, not subtly, but spectacularly. The Indiana Fever situation is the perfect microcosm of everything wrong with how this league operates. You've got a generational talent who draws massive ratings, and instead of building around her, protecting her, maximizing her impact, the organization is actively limiting her effectiveness. Stephanie White's coaching decisions aren't just questionable, they're contradictory to basic basketball strategy. Playing guards at forward positions, running the offense through players who can't score, limiting touches for your best playmaker. These aren't adjustments, they're sabotage. And whether it's conscious or unconscious doesn't matter because the result is the same. The front office response is even worse. Blocking journalists, ignoring fan feedback, pretending everything is fine while the ship sinks. Amber Cox blocking Jason Whitlock isn't just unprofessional, it's revealing. It shows an organization that's more concerned with controlling the narrative than addressing legitimate problems. And the league office, silent. They'll release statements about inclusivity and growth, but when officials let Clark get mauled game after game with no consequences, when coaching decisions clearly limit the league's biggest star, when front offices act like accountability doesn't apply to them, where's the intervention? Where's the leadership? Here's what the WNBA doesn't seem to understand. Caitlin Clark fans aren't obligated to become WNBA fans. They came for her. They stayed because they wanted to support women's basketball. But that support isn't unconditional. When you make it miserable to watch, when you actively undermine the player they came to see, when you treat criticism as betrayal instead of feedback, they'll leave, and they are leaving. Look at the comment we showed earlier. My summer schedule is totally freed up. That's not anger, that's relief. Relief that they don't have to invest emotional energy into something that consistently disappoints them. Relief that they don't have to defend a league that won't defend itself. Relief that they can walk away from the car crash instead of watching it in slow motion. The expansion team situation makes it even worse. The Golden State Valkyries have a better record than the Fever, an expansion team. A franchise that didn't exist 6 months ago has figured out how to win more games than the team with the biggest star in the league. That's not bad luck. That's organizational failure at every level. Christie Sides posting herself golfing during the blowout is the cherry on top. She knows what she had. She knows what they lost. She knows that the decision to fire her and bring in Stephanie White was about control, not winning. And she's watching it all fall apart exactly like she probably predicted it would. The tragedy is that this was all preventable. Keep Sides, or if you're going to replace her, bring in someone who understands how to maximize elite talent. Protect your star from the physical abuse she's taking every game. Build a front office that can handle criticism and media scrutiny like professionals. Support the player who's bringing unprecedented attention to your league instead of resenting her for it. But they didn't do any of that. And now we're watching the consequences play out in real time. Fans are tuning out. Ratings are disappearing. The biggest opportunity in WNBA history is slipping away because the people in charge can't get out of their own way. So here's the question the league needs to answer. What happens when Caitlin Clark's fans are gone? When the casual viewers who came for her decide it's not worth the frustration? When the sellout crowds go back to being half-empty arenas? When the next TV contract negotiation happens and the networks look at the viewership numbers without Clark's drawing power? Because that's what's at stake here, not just one season for the Indiana Fever, the entire future trajectory of the WNBA. And right now, the people making decisions seem determined to waste it. If you're a Fever fan who's still hanging on, drop a comment and tell me what it would take for you to walk away completely. If you've already tuned out, let me know what the final straw was. And if you think I'm wrong about any of this, make your case. Hit that subscribe button because this situation is only going to get messier, and we'll be covering every development as it happens.